It was 6:14 in the morning when the screen of the family tablet lit up the kitchen counter. A single automated email notification flashed in bright white text, withdrawal successful. $150,000 transferred to an offshore crypto account. That was every single penny of my late father's life insurance payout. The money we were supposed to use for the down payment on our first home, gone in one click. I looked across the kitchen island. Spencer, my husband, was gently blowing steam off his morning coffee. His hand was perfectly steady. Next to him, my mother-in-law, Catherine, leaned against the marble counter. She caught me staring at the glowing screen. A slow, thin smirk crept across her wrinkled face. She took a deliberate sip of her tea, set the cup down on a coaster, and crossed her arms. Finally, she spoke, her voice dripping with casual cruelty. She said it was about time he put that money to real use. I gripped the edge of the granite counter until my knuckles turned white. My chest went entirely cold. I swallowed the thick lump in my throat and stared at the floor, forcing my breathing to remain perfectly even. Years ago, a betrayal like this would have broken me. I would have screamed, demanded answers, or collapsed into a puddle of tears. But standing in that pristine kitchen, surrounded by the appliances my salary paid for, a profound, terrifying clarity washed over me. I teach high school seniors for a living. I manage entitled, emotionally volatile young adults every single day. They thought my silence was submission. But a teacher knows exactly how to handle adult toddlers. You do not argue with a tantrum. You quietly remove their privileges. My father worked on his feet for 42 years. He breathed in factory dust and saved every spare dime so his only daughter would never have to struggle. When he died 3 months ago, holding my hand in a sterile hospital room, his final words were a plea for me to build a safe, secure life. Catherine never saw my father as a human being. To her, he was just a delayed payout. From the moment we got married, Catherine treated me strictly as a financial asset. If her roof leaked, Spencer volunteered my savings. If she wanted to host a lavish holiday dinner to impress her country club friends, I was expected to foot the grocery bill. Whenever I pushed back, the narrative was always the same. Family sacrifices for family. They used the word loyalty like a weapon, twisting it to mean absolute compliance. They broke my spirit back then. But today, standing in the wreckage of my inheritance, I was the one holding the hammer. I looked up from the counter and met Spencer's eyes. He set his coffee mug down, adopting a practiced expression of mild annoyance. He crossed the kitchen and leaned against the refrigerator. He told me to calm down and stop being so dramatic. It was marital property, he claimed, and he needed it to clear up a few misunderstandings with some associates. Misunderstandings. That was his sanitized word for a crippling offshore gambling addiction. He confessed he moved the funds to cover his debts because it was our money. And a marriage is a partnership. Catherine stepped forward, inserting herself between us like a shield. Her eyes were hard and uncompromising. She lectured me about the duties of a real wife. A real wife, she insisted, fixes her husband's mistakes without complaining. She pointed a manicured finger at my chest and told me I was being selfish for hoarding dead money while her son was in distress. Then she crossed the ultimate line. She demanded I go to the bank that afternoon and take out a second mortgage on the house. She said Spencer needed a recovery trip to Las Vegas to clear his head and get away from my suffocating negativity. The air in the room felt so thin I could barely breathe. The sheer audacity of her demand hung in the silence. They actually believed I would nod, apologize, and march to the bank. They operated under the delusion that I was still the soft-hearted, eager-to-please girl they manipulated for the past 5 years. My jaw locked. I turned on my heel, walked out of the kitchen, and went straight to the guest bedroom. I waited. 2 hours later, I heard the front door open and close. Through the blinds, I watched Catherine's silver sedan back out of the driveway. They were going out for a celebratory lunch to plan his little recovery vacation. The moment their car disappeared down the street, my operation began. I bypassed the tears and shifted into silent. Lethal precision. I walked to the hallway closet, reached up to the top shelf, and retrieved a small lockbox. Inside was the spare key to Spencer's prized possession, a fully restored vintage pickup truck parked in the driveway. It was his obsession. He spent every weekend waxing it and showing it off to the neighbors. But there was one crucial detail he conveniently forgot. I bought that truck for him as a wedding gift, and the title was registered solely in my name. I marched outside, unlocked the truck, and fired up the engine. I drove straight to the largest auto buyer in the city. The waiting room was sterile and smelled like stale coffee. For 2 agonizing hours, I sat in a plastic chair while the appraiser went over every inch of the vehicle. My phone buzzed relentlessly in my purse. 12 missed calls from Spencer. 4 text messages demanding to know where his truck was. I ignored every single one of them. Finally, the manager called me to the desk. I signed 3 pieces of paper, handed over the keys, and walked out the glass doors holding a cashier's check for $32,000. I marched straight to a new bank across town, opened an account in my name only, and deposited the funds. His leverage was officially liquidated. When I returned to the empty house, I sat at the dining room table and opened my laptop. I pulled up the shared tablet and accessed the automated logs. He thought he was a genius moving money offshore, but he left the digital trail wide open on a family device. One glance at the screen confirmed everything: dates, amounts, and destination wallets. I meticulously compiled the transaction history. I did not just want my money back. I wanted total destruction. I downloaded Internal Revenue Service Form 3949A, the official document for reporting suspected tax fraud and undeclared offshore structuring. I attached every single screenshot, sealed the envelope, and paid for certified overnight delivery. Next, I picked up my phone and called Julia. We were roommates in college, and she is now the most ruthless family law attorney in the state. I laid out the exact details of the morning. Julia did not offer empty sympathy. She offered a legal strike. Because the house was a premarital asset purchased entirely with my funds before the wedding, she drafted an ironclad eviction notice. We bypassed the standard delays by filing for an emergency temporary injunction, freezing all his remaining access to our joint accounts based on severe financial abuse and documented illicit gambling activity. By 4 o'clock the next afternoon, the trap was set. I stood in the living room, watching through the front window as Catherine's sedan pulled back into the driveway. Spencer stepped out first. He stopped dead in his tracks. He stared at the empty space where his vintage truck used to be. Panic washed over his face. He sprinted to the front porch and shoved his key into the deadbolt. It would not turn. I had a locksmith replace every cylinder in the house 3 hours earlier. He pounded on the heavy oak door. Before he could shout, a black luxury sedan pulled up to the curb. Julia stepped out, wearing a sharp tailored suit and holding a thick manila envelope. She walked up the driveway with the cold authority of an executioner. Catherine scrambled out of the passenger seat, demanding to know who Julia was and what was going on. Julia ignored Catherine completely. She stepped onto the porch, looked Spencer dead in the eyes, and handed him the envelope. She stated with absolute zero emotion that he had exactly 10 minutes to pack a single bag of clothes before she called the police to enforce a trespass code on the property. Then Julia turned around, got back into her car, and drove away, leaving a suffocating silence in her wake. I opened the front door, leaving the heavy security screen locked between us. Spencer's face was pale. The arrogant smirk from the morning was completely erased. He clutched the legal papers, his hands trembling violently. He stammered, demanding his truck, demanding his money, begging me to stop overreacting. I looked right through him. My voice was quiet, but every word hit like a hammer. I told him the truck was sold. The money was secured. And the Internal Revenue Service would be contacting him shortly regarding his undeclared offshore gambling accounts. Catherine snapped. Her face twisted into a mask of pure, unhinged rage. She lunged forward, screaming that I was a vindictive monster destroying her family. She grabbed the family tablet from her purse, the one she took with her to lunch, and hurled it onto the concrete porch. The screen shattered into a spider web of glass. She thought she was destroying the evidence. She thought she was winning. I let out a dry, hollow laugh. I informed her that every document was cloud synced, printed, and already sitting on a federal investigator's desk. Spencer collapsed onto the porch steps, burying his face in his hands as the reality of his absolute financial ruin crashed down on him. Catherine grabbed his arm, yanking him toward her car, screaming that they did not need me and that she would fix this herself. She promised him she would hire the best lawyer in the city. But Catherine had no money. Her entitlement blinded her to consequence. Desperation makes toxic people sloppy. 2 days later, my phone pinged with a high-priority alert from Experian. A hard credit inquiry for a premium credit card had just been blocked. Because of the theft, I proactively froze my credit the very same afternoon I sold the truck. Someone was trying to open a $25,000 line of credit in my name. I did not call Catherine to scream. I did not confront Spencer. I simply opened the security application on my phone and reviewed the hidden hallway nanny cam footage from the morning of the theft. There, in crisp, high definition, was Catherine. While Spencer and I were arguing in the kitchen, she had slipped into my home office, pried open my locked filing cabinet with a letter opener, and slipped my Social Security card into her designer purse. I took the digital credit alert and the timestamp video footage straight to the local police precinct. I handed the detective the file. There was no instant dramatic driveway arrest. Real justice takes time, and I was perfectly willing to wait. 48 hours later, detectives secured a warrant. They traced the application's internet protocol address directly to Catherine's mobile device. They found her sitting in a crowded, upscale restaurant, sipping white wine with her country club friends. 2 uniformed officers approached the table, read her Miranda rights loudly over the ambient music, and placed her in handcuffs. Her reputation in that manicured suburb was annihilated in a matter of seconds. The silence in my house that evening was deafening. But for the first time in 5 years, the silence did not feel lonely. It felt like a fortress. The judge eventually sentenced Catherine to 4 years in a state facility for felony identity theft and fraud. The court also ordered full restitution, though I know I will likely never see the remaining stolen funds. Spencer's life dissolved into a bureaucratic nightmare. Slapped with massive federal tax penalties and abandoned by his mother, he was forced to move into a tiny studio apartment across the state. His credit utterly destroyed. A few months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The return address belonged to a state correctional facility. It was from Catherine. The handwriting was shaky, a stark contrast to her usual commanding script. The letter was a masterpiece of manipulation. She wrote that she was still my family, that she only did what she had to do to protect her son, and that she forgave me for putting her in there. She asked me to deposit a few $100s into her commissary account. She tried to pluck the old strings of guilt that used to control me. I stood in my kitchen, the same kitchen where she once stood and smirked at my ruin. I did not feel a rush of anger. I did not feel the urge to write a scathing reply. I felt absolute, unshakable indifference. I tore the letter down the middle, dropped it into the recycling bin, and went back to brewing my coffee. In the year since I changed the locks, my life has transformed. I host dinners now, not for demanding in-laws, but for the chosen family who stood by me. Julia comes over on Fridays. My fellow teachers gather in my backyard. We laugh. We share meals. And there is no hidden agenda. There is no lingering tension. No walking on eggshells. No paying for affection. The contrast between the chaos of my past and the deep, abiding peace of my present is staggering. I want to look you directly in the eye right now and tell you something the world tries very hard to make you forget. The concept of family is often weaponized by those who want to use you. They wrap their greed in the language of loyalty, but loyalty is a two-way street. And respect is the pavement it is built on. Rule number 1, blood does not make you family. Respect and reciprocity do. If someone only loves you for the resources you provide, they do not love you at all. They love the convenience of your sacrifice. When you stop giving, you will quickly see exactly how much they actually care about your well-being. Rule number 2, forgiveness without accountability is not grace. It is just an invitation for more abuse. A toxic person will always demand that you be the bigger person because it allows them to escape the consequences of their action. An apology that does not come with change behavior is just manipulation with a bow on top. You are not required to set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. Rule number 3, your peace is worth infinitely more than their approval. Sometimes the only way to win a rigged, toxic game is to flip the board over and walk away entirely. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if you share a last name. You are allowed to mourn the family you wished you had, while simultaneously protecting yourself from the family you actually got. I spent years trying to earn a seat at a table where I was only ever viewed as the meal. Today, I own the table. I am Natalie, and for the first time in my life, I am entirely free. I want to ask you a question tonight. I want you to sit with it and be brutally honest with yourself. Who in your life is withdrawing from your emotional bank account without ever making a deposit? Who is using your guilt to fund their comfort? When are you going to freeze their access? Drop a 100 in the comments below if you are finally ready to protect your peace. Share this story with someone who needs the courage to change their own locks. Do not wait for them to empty your account. Take your power back today. I know exactly what you are screaming at the screen right now. You are sitting there asking yourself, why on earth did she wait 5 long years to fight back? Why did she allow a toxic husband and a manipulative mother-in-law to treat her like a personal automated teller machine for so long before finally changing the locks? Let us talk about the psychology of the trap, because it happens to the best of us. Natalie was not weak, and she certainly was not stupid. She was trapped in a cycle of what clinical psychologists call intermittent reinforcement. In the real world, I call it the slot machine effect. When a toxic family treats you terribly 90% of the time, but hands you a tiny fake crumb of approval or inclusion, the other 10%, your brain gets hooked on pulling the lever. You keep paying their bills. You keep sacrificing your boundaries, hoping that this time you will finally hit the jackpot of their genuine respect. But here's the brutal truth. They do not want a relationship with you. They want a premium subscription to your resources. But the moment Natalie woke up, she executed an absolute masterclass in street-smart financial self-defense. Let us break down her 3 most brilliant moves so you can use them if you were ever backed into a corner. First, she used the silent audit strategy. Notice how she did not waste a single breath crying or begging for the $150,000 back. Scammers and abusers thrive on your emotional chaos. Instead, she quietly pulled the offshore crypto transfer logs and filed Internal Revenue Service Form 3949A. By doing this, she weaponized his own secret against him. She did not just seek revenge, she triggered a catastrophic federal tax audit. Second, the cold liquidation of assets. Instead of starting a screaming match in the driveway, she waited until the house was completely empty. She took the vintage truck and asset legally titled solely in her name and liquidated it for a $32,000 cashier's check. She removed his primary financial leverage cleanly, legally, and without a single raised voice. Third, she built a digital fortress, anticipating that desperate people will do desperate, illegal things when cut off. She proactively placed a hard freeze on her credit. That single free 5-minute step is exactly what caught Catherine committing felony identity theft on camera. For a long time, I thought the money was the thing I lost. $150,000. My father's final gift, the down payment on the safe life he wanted me to have. The proof of every overtime shift, every sacrifice, every quiet dream he carried for me. But after the locks were changed and the house finally fell silent, I understood the truth. The money was not the deepest theft. The deepest theft was the way they made me question my right to protect myself. The way Spencer called betrayal partnership. The way Catherine called greed loyalty. The way they expected me to confuse marriage with surrender and family with unlimited access. That ended the day I stopped asking them to understand. I did not get every dollar back. Maybe I never will. But I gained something they could never steal again. Control, clarity, peace. The kind of peace that does not depend on anyone's permission. The kind that comes from knowing every door is locked, every account is protected, and every person in your life is there because they respect you, not because they can drain you. Sometimes I still think about my father. I think about his hands, worn from 42 years of work. I think about his final wish for me to build something safe. For a while, I believed they had destroyed that wish. They did not. They revealed exactly why I needed it. This house is safe now, not because nothing bad ever happened here, but because I finally removed the people who made it unsafe My kitchen is no longer a courtroom. My phone is no longer a leash. My bank account is no longer a family emergency fund for people who never treated my pain as an emergency. And when Catherine's letter came, asking for forgiveness, asking for money, asking for one more opening, I finally saw it for what it was, not love, a withdrawal attempt. This time, the account was closed. If you are listening to this while someone is spending your kindness faster than you can rebuild it, please hear me clearly. You are not cruel for cutting off access. You are not selfish for protecting what you earned. You are not heartless because you refuse to fund the people who keep hurting you. Love does not require financial ruin. Loyalty does not require silence. Family does not require you to become an open wallet with a pulse. Freeze the card. Change the locks, save the receipts, choose yourself before they empty everything and call it devotion. Because the day you stop funding your own destruction is the day your real life begins. Here is the final verdict. You cannot negotiate with a financial parasite, and you cannot buy the loyalty of someone who only sees you as a walking bank account. Investing in your freedom, even if it means walking away from the money you lost, is the highest return on investment you will ever make. If you have ever had to financially cut off a toxic relative or partner, I want to hear exactly how you did it. Drop your survival story in the comments below. Hit that subscribe button for more street smart strategies. And remember, your peace of mind is your most valuable asset. Protect it at all costs.